Namaste. Namaste and welcome to this short practice that I've especially recorded for recent participants of our bar and yoga workshops Sundays. So this practice is based around the 90-90 pose, or deer pose as we call it in yoga. And it's really, really good for lengthening out that space all around the back of the buttocks, the hips, the outside edge of the hips as well. But interestingly enough, it does some good work for the inner thighs too. And we're going to add a couple of bits and pieces to it so that we can find our way into a little bit more releasing and lengthening. And if you feel closed or tight in your hips, sometimes people blame it on their hamstrings, but often it is lots of the body working together that we need to work with to find length and space in which to work. So you might need a couple of blocks here. I've got these yoga blocks, but a couple of cushions or a few sturdy books might be quite good as an alternative. There's certainly no need to rush out and buy any equipment. I'm just going to pop them to one side for now so I can grab them if needed. And I'm doing this having warmed up, and it's really good actually to do this practice after you've had a workout, or perhaps you've done a bar class, or you might have been doing some sort of dynamic warming activity like running or swimming or cycling, these sorts of things. If you work out a lot at the gym, this is great as a wind down from that too. And it works also for strong yoga practices, although we don't often do those on our bar and yoga workshop days. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the knees a little bit bent. I'm just leaning back onto my hands here. I'm going to start circling one ankle and then the other. Need to be all on the camera. There we are. And what this does is it helps to lubricate the hip joint. So I'm circling one knee and the other, one ankle and then the other. It warms up all of those things, but particularly in the hips, the head of the femur is rolling in the hip joint, and we're going to circle in the opposite direction. It's lubricating that joint. And if you ever get sort of crunchy, odd feelings in your joints, it's usually down to a lack of lubrication. Even when it's wear and tear, a bit of lubrication can really help. And the other thing I can do is just shake the legs in and out a little bit and just tap my heels on the floor just to energize the legs a bit. So then we're going to find our way into a 90-90 seated position. So I want to have one knee in front of me and one knee out to the side. And from the side, this does indeed look like two sets of right angles. So you've got a right angle between the knee and the what's this called? The thigh, and between the thigh and the torso, and then between the opposite leg as well. So for lots of us, sitting in a true 90-90 or deer pose is just too toughy. It's too toughy because we haven't got enough space. We might need to lean away. We might get crampy feelings on this back hip. So if that's the case, you can bring your feet a little closer towards you. So instead of being 90-90, you get your feet moved in, and suddenly that's much, much easier. So if that's easier for you, it's okay to do it like this. We're just aiming in the direction of these right angle type poses. You must do what's right for your knees as well. So if it doesn't suit your knees or your hips for any reason, then ease out of this. And whilst I won't get it recorded today, there is a video coming that will be about doing this posture in different ways, so it's more accessible for those of you who find it more difficult to do it, challenging to do it on the floor like this. So wherever you are, even if you're giving yourself a little bit of space by leaning out to the side here, just spending time in this posture is helpful. So it's different from the other ways in which we sit. It has a little bit of inward rotation for one thigh, outward for the other, one hip rather, and out for the other. And because the legs are in flexion, excuse me, that's actually a little bit easier for us to manage most of the time. So if you want to develop this posture, spending time in it is really the best way to do that. And the other thing that we can do is we can go from one side to the other. So we can go from here to here. So moving from one side to the other. Let me just give myself a bit more space. So it's a simple case of just shifting your weight. Now, it might be that you need to lean back to do that, and that's absolutely fine. So just giving yourself a little bit of space, rolling one knee to the floor, the opposite outside thigh to the floor, in and out. Simple as that. Feels great. It feels great if you're just encouraging a little bit of length there as well. You're using your core muscles to do this, which is lovely, and you're really lubricating those hip joints and making sure the hip moves in all the directions it's supposed to move. And our hips should be able to do that for the length of our lives as well. So it's good to practice that when you can. When you've done a little bit of shifting from side to side, you might actually, when you've done a little bit of leaning back, if you're able to do this shifting from side to side sitting up, then you can do it where you free the feet from the floor. So you balance on your buttocks and free the feet from the floor as you go from side to side. And the more you practice, of course, the easier it gets. And of course, that is incredibly good for your core as you are really using it to make these shapes from one side to the other. So have a practice with any of these three levels, whether it's leaning back, doing it with the feet on the floor, or doing it with the feet off the floor. And just explore what feels good to you. And then when you're comfortable enough to sit in this posture for a little while, we're going to use it to provide a little bit of opportunity to find stretchy places that other poses just don't reach. So here we're sitting really tall, and we're going to fold a little bit forward over the front leg. So we want that front leg to feel good as we do that. If you get any sensations in the knees of a little torsion or twist or pain, absolutely rest out of this and go back to doing figure four stretch instead. So figure four stretch, which can be done either leaning back on your hands and sitting up like this, or done on the floor where you bring your knee into your chest. These are great alternatives for this pose. And the fact is that this pose does the things that they do, but it also does it a little bit more. So when you're ready for a bit more, then it can offer that to you. So sitting nice and tall, leaning forward over the front leg, and we want the hands to be nice and wide. What we want to avoid is the shoulders coming up or any rounding of the spine, because that automatically takes the length to a different part of the body than we're trying to reach. So here we're trying to draw the shoulder blades towards each other to open the chest, even have a sensation of maybe sticking your bottom out a little bit and keeping the belly lifted, just moving into wherever feels like a good spot for you. Now, it might be that you're quite high up. It might be that you're much lower down. It doesn't matter. Wherever you are that feels good, we're going to back slightly away. So we come up a little bit and then sway from side to side. And as we sway from side to side, you can feel that sensation of length moving in your body. It might move around your buttock, the front leg. This is my right leg. So it might move around the front leg, buttock and hip. You might feel it more in a different part of your body. I can feel it's also deep in the left side of my torso here at the front. When you've created a little bit of space, you might be able to come down a little bit lower. And you might find your way to a point that feels good, where you're resting over that front thigh. And the body weight on the thigh encourages even more openness in that front thigh. So we get even more sensation. However, you've got to get there to be able to do that. So it's okay to be higher up. If you're feeling great sensation there, then that's enough. You don't need to be further forward into the pose. Wherever you get to, just supporting. So it might be that you are able to get your forearms to the floor. It might be that you're able to get your forehead to the floor, or you might build a pillow out of your hands or use one of those handy blocks. If you're low enough down to get your head down on something, it's really useful to rest it down because the weight of the head is heavy. If you're higher up, it doesn't matter so much because of the orientation of the body. But wherever you are, just taking a few steady deep breaths, making sure your shoulders haven't crept up, making sure that your belly is still lifted so that you can create that space to move into. Postures like this become more effective the longer we hold them to a certain point. So here, 5 deep breaths is a really good first stage, but you might then hold for maybe 10 deep breaths. More than 15 deep breaths, you probably need to be supporting your head if you haven't done so. When you're ready, you can release all the way up, and we need to find a bit of relief for that front hip. So we're going to lean back onto our hands, sway the knees a little bit from side to side, and then find some length with the legs, maybe paddling the legs. Here, if you practice yoga and you're familiar with downward facing dog is a really nice way to stretch out the effort that you've made here. Nice soft knees, wiggling the hips around, lifting the tailbone high. If you're not familiar with downward dog, it's okay to practice one of the other suggestions, or give it a go if you really like to. So we've done it on one side, we're going to do it on the other side as well. So again, we're trying to find that 90-90 position that feels really good. And it might be that you need your feet a little bit closer towards you. Remember those alternatives. You might need to lean a little bit away. That's great too. We want to explore the difference between working with one side and the other. So it's going to be different. Our hips are never the same, one side and the other. So when you're ready, you can draw yourself into a nice upright position, leaning to the side. You can still be lengthened in the spine. It's not a problem. Draw the shoulder blades towards each other and just find your way a little bit forward and explore where is your sort of range of movement. Where can you get to? So we don't want to start wiggling around right at the end of our range of movement. We want to come back a little bit and then sway the chest from side to side. And if that feels good, you might be able to lower yourself a little bit down, because that swaying from side to side, what that does is it encourages length into the structures of the body that aren't as pliable as muscles and ligaments and tendons. So structures like nerves and blood vessels and things like that. We don't have endless space in those structures. We do need to work with what's available. So if you get odd, sharpy, tingling sensations, that's a sign to back out of whatever you're doing. But when you've created a bit of space, and it might be that today there is no more space, and that's fine. Come back to practice again tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and you will develop more space. But when you've got some more space to move into, you can come a little bit further forward. And if you're able to, you can get your body weight onto that front leg, which encourages that outside hip to the floor. You get even stronger sensation of length around that hip. But that might not suit your knees. So if there's anything going on in your knees, back out of it completely. But if you can, reaching the arms away, settling your head on something. I can't go as deep in this pose on this side, so I definitely need support for my head here. And just holding for 5 or 10 deep breaths. And we're trying to give ourselves an opportunity to be in this position long enough to effect a change, to effect an improved length or affect an improved release of tension. And at the same time, we're trying to avoid hunching the shoulders or drawing the shoulders up towards the ears or rounding too much through the upper back. A little bit of lift in the belly muscles can really help here, helps you to find length in the back of the body. Most muscles work in opposing pairs, but on the torso, it isn't quite as simple as that. But a little bit of lift in the front body helps lengthen the back body for sure. Whenever you're ready, you can pad your hands back towards you, coming up to an upright position, easing back away from the hips to be able to release away from the floor. Give them a little wiggle from side to side. You might want to lengthen your legs out, give them a shake, or take that downward facing dog on this side as well. Really nice way to lengthen out. And also in our 90-90 or deer pose, we are sort of rotated and spiraled, but in downward dog, we are much more linear, which is quite a nice way to balance out that effect of the pose in the body. So that was the 90-90 or deer pose stretch. And there are different ways, different things that we can do with it. So if you haven't had enough already today, then we can come back into that pose on the first side. And we did a simple forward fold, but you can also fold in different directions. So if you've got the space to fold towards that front foot, you can do that. I don't have very much space to go in that direction, but you might. And it feels differently on this back leg. But the other thing that's really nice to do is to turn away from the legs and fold away. So fold towards the floor, but turned away from the legs. And you can, again, make your way down by shimmying yourself from side to side to find space, and then resting wherever comes naturally to you. Use the support of a block if you need it. Taking a few deep breaths, maybe just 5 deep breaths in this pose. Just for today. You can spend longer in it if you like it. It's harder to breathe deeply in twisted positions, but do try. It's a great way to promote strength through the respiratory system to improve breathing. When you're ready, you can gently release out and come back to center. Feels fantastic, doesn't it? And then we can do the same thing on the other side. So if you need to release more fully, you absolutely can. But if you're comfortable to do this on the other side straight away, and just seeing if you can twist towards your feet first, seeing what's available for you there. I find this quite a closed position for me. There isn't much room to go. I can do a little bit of shimmering here. It's not going to do very much, I can tell today. It feels like I haven't got enough length there. But there's no need to get any further than where your body is open to go. We can twist the opposite way, just finding our way. It might be that you're not very far twisted round. You could be much further twisted round if it really suited you. But just finding a place that feels good, a little shimmer from side to side, and then finding your way down, maybe using a block for support. Remembering that a tiny touch of lift in your belly muscles usually affords you a bit more space to move. Taking some deep, deep breaths. When you're ready, you can gently pad yourself back to center. Oh, fantastic stuff. And again, releasing your legs, giving them a shake. Maybe instead of a down dog, we could do a tabletop position. So lifting the hips up and down a couple of times. What we don't want to do is over-activate the muscles we've just stretched out. So too many of those and you'll fire up everything that you've just lengthened beautifully. So now we've done that to both sides, we can progress our 90-90 stretch into a proper pigeon pose. if you want to. So this is completely just a nice to have. That's what the blocks are for. So we can start pigeon pose from our hands and knees. And we're going to start bringing the right leg forward first. So if you bring the right knee towards the right wrist, and then the right ankle towards the left wrist, and then we press the left leg back. So we're much more centered here, but the legs are in a completely different position. So instead of being out to the side, our left hip is moving backwards, more like it would be if we were in a splits position. And here we can be a little bit buoyant. So we want to press that front foot down, front leg down, and just bounce our left knee up and down. And as you do that, you can feel sensations through the hips, through the pelvis. You can feel whether it feels good or not. If you've got any sensations of torsion or twist in your front knee, then it needs support. It might need a block underneath the hips. It might need your right foot back towards the right side instead of across the body. So let me do this front on so I can show you. So it might be that you're here, or you might come all the way back to here. That's fine. It doesn't matter which of these. It might be that you're able to get your shin parallel to the edge of your mat. I definitely can't do that. That would break my knees, I think. But some people are able to, and everyone's got their own hip rotations available. So we're just padding up and down here, just finding a nice buoyancy in our pose. And if you need that support, placing it underneath the buttock, it's not doing it in a way that's worse. It's just different. It's just supported. That's all it is. Helps you to be in this position. That's great. But if all of that doesn't work, try leaning that hip to the floor. So instead of being 90-90 like this, you're stretching your back leg back as far as feels comfortable. Maybe it comes around behind you. Maybe it's still a little bit out to the side. That's okay. You'll still get a different sensation on this front hip when you move forward, a little bit stronger than it would be in this pose. So any of these options is good. I'm just going to turn this way again. So once you've found the sort of active pigeon of your choice, you can rest into this, tucking the back toe flat if you want to, and if you wish to, finding a little bit of a length over that front leg. So that's not useful for everybody. I find I don't spend so much time in this pose, this variation of the pose, as I used to, because my knees don't like it as much as they used to. And I'm also really long in the hamstrings already. I don't really need any extra length there. So this length that I get from my hips is quite nice, but I get most of that from my 90-90 stretch. You can move your hands away from you to bring your forehead down onto a support or onto the floor, spending as long as you like, maybe 5 or 10 breaths in this pose. The further away from you your arms are, the more challenging it is, the more intense the stretching is. And if you feel that's great for you, fantastic. And if you feel it's not, then like me, you can back away a little bit and just hang out a little bit closer to upright. If you want to, it's also possible to stretch your back leg at the same time in this pose. We come up a little bit and bend the back knee in and just see if you can hold onto that back foot. Now, it might be that a belt or a strap of some kind would be useful here. But the other thing is that you can just simply flirt with drawing your foot in and out. Just see what feels good. You can hold it towards your buttocks if it feels good to you. Just feel that stretch on the back thigh as well. When you're ready, releasing out, and this time I would come to hands and knees for sure and stretch the leg that's been bent. That right leg out behind you, just ease into the heel, or if you prefer, take downward facing dog. And downward facing dog is great here for doing a 3-legged dog. So lifting the right leg up, just finding space in the front of the pelvis there for a few breaths. When you're ready, you can work to the opposite side. So we draw the left knee towards the left wrist, the left ankle towards the right wrist, and just ease ourselves backwards a little bit, tucking the back toe under, doing a little buoyancy with that back knee bouncing, trying to find a way to create a little bit of space between the legs to get the hips towards the floor. Now, it might be you need to move that front foot to different positions to make it best for you. I find that this is actually my right knee, but this side doesn't like it so very much. So I'm going to rest my hip down here on the floor. I could put a block underneath my hip, which is also fine. I find that a great variation, but it still feels a bit twisty in my knee. So, oh, she said. So a little block out and resting my hip to the floor feels fantastic. It feels like a great stretch for my body, but it honors what my body is going through and doing. And I broke my knee in my 20s and it doesn't like very many things, so that's all good. So here we're trying to get the hips a little bit squarer if possible, exploring what feels good to you. If you're on this left hip, then it won't feel so good to be able to square the hips. But if you're in a classic pigeon pose, squaring the hips a little bit more might feel good, might tap into something there. And then wherever you are, you can explore your way to leaning forward over that front leg. And I'm actually quite comfortable today if I support myself a little bit with my hands to do that, but equally could be done with the hip lying on the floor or supporting the head on a block, your hands, or being just higher up is fine too. Wherever you want to rest, take 5 or even 10 breaths if you like, particularly if you find the stretch very therapeutic, if it gets to places that you would really like to be able to work with. So one of my students is a ski instructor, and she has got really strong legs, as you might imagine, really strong legs. And I've got other clients who are horse women, I don't know what the technical equestrians, there we are, that's the technical term. And again, you might have really, really strong muscles and your body used to being in a certain position. But if you can, just spending a few deep breaths in a position that might be therapeutic is great. When you're ready, you can come to an upright position and just see if that back knee wants to bend, bring the foot in towards you, just lengthening out that back thigh as well. And just doing what feels good. It might be just comfortable moving in and out. You might use a strap to reach that back foot. You might be able to draw the foot a little bit deeper in. When you're ready to release, we can come onto hands and knees and lengthen the left leg back, do a little bit of rocking, or if you are feeling like it's a good thing to do, coming into downward facing dog, 3-legged dog, lifting the left leg up into the air, doing a little shimmer or a shake, movement that feels good to you. Oh, I'm just going to activate that buttock a little bit more. It feels great. And then when you're ready, coming to sitting. Now, after all of that action, it's a really good idea to do some relaxation. So you may think that stretching is very passive and there's not much going on, but in fact, there is an incredible amount going on. That stretching lengthens not just your muscles and ligaments and tendons, hopefully not too much on the ligaments, but it also works on your lymphatic system, your circulatory system, your endocrine system, your nervous system, and it has an incredible deep effect that we only really notice or get the benefit of if we do some relaxation as well. So here, I'm probably going to relax on my tummy because it's a really nice way to lengthen those parts of the body that have been in use to the floor. So you can come onto your belly, support your head with your hands, allow your toes to fall inwards and your heels to fall outwards. And just take some deep breaths here. Maybe shimmer the hips from side to side for a few moments to soften any effort in the thighs, particularly across the quads, the front of the pelvis, the belly muscles. And then if you want to, of course, you can turn your head to one side. If you're comfortable on your tummy, stay here and see if you can do 5 minutes of deep breathing. Softening all the effort in the body. For those who are comfortable as they are, you can stay as you are. For those who find the belly lying not so comfortable, you can try child's pose. Wide knees, toes together, reaching the arms ahead of the body. Breathing deeply here. Same process of softening the belly and any effort in the body. If those don't find favor, you could try legs up the wall, which means coming to the wall or a chair, swinging your legs up, your torso down, relaxing the backs of the legs, the back of the body. Whichever position you have chosen, just spending a few more minutes, maybe closing the eyes if you haven't already done so. If you wish to do a longer relaxation, you can absolutely do that. You can pause the video here or just simply let the video play but remain in place. When you feel restored, when your breath is soft and even, when you've been able to release the tension from across your face, your jaw, your shoulders, then you can gather yourself back to center. If you're on your belly, pressing into child's pose. If you're in child's pose, coming up to kneeling. If your legs up the wall, knees into the chest, and then roll to one side. With yoga, there are always so many options to do something that sometimes it feels like there are lots of things being fired at you. It's okay to just choose one and work with that, and then another time investigate into another direction. But for today, that is the end of our practice. I hope that you found it useful. I hope that you've been able to really release some of the effort and tension from around the hips and buttocks. And it's not a great idea to lift weights immediately after this. And what I mean is to do super big strength work with the muscles you've just lengthened. That's the wrong way around to do things. Always do this kind of more prolonged stretching after your big effort work. And I hope to see you again. Please like and subscribe to this channel, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next workshop as well. Namaste.